Hello, I'm Jane Mangold from the Agricultural Research Service and the Eastern Oregon Ag Research Center with an Ag Minute. Most of us are aware of the issue of invasive noxious weeds on western range and wildlands. Some of the most troublesome weeds in the western states are yellow star thistle, cheatgrass, leafy spurge, and spotted and diffuse knapweed, with each species infesting over 2.5 million acres. Once established, these species have economical and ecological impacts. The vast majority of invasive plants are exotic species that were introduced to North America from other countries, often Eastern Europe or Western Asia. The Western U.S. is not alone in its battle against invasive plants, however. Other parts of the U.S. are fighting invasive plants, and many areas around the globe are fighting similar wars, but against different enemies. Even more surprising is that some of the enemies they are fighting come from this country. This week, we'll be talking about invasive plants in other parts of the U.S. and in other areas of the world, and how weed invasion is impacting local ecosystems and economies. This week, we're talking about invasive plant species in other parts of the U.S. and across the globe. Today, we'll focus on kudzu, an extremely aggressive, semi-woody vine that has taken over the southeastern U.S. Called the vine that ate the South, kudzu can grow up to a foot per day during the summer and infests over 7 million acres. Kudzu was brought to the U.S. in 1876 to the Centennial Exposition in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Japanese government displayed it in a beautiful garden filled with plants from their own country. The large leaves and sweet-smelling blooms captured the imagination of American gardeners who used the plant for ornamental purposes. In the 1930s, the Soil Conservation Service promoted the use of kudzu for controlling soil erosion. Farmers were paid as much as $8 an acre to plant fields of the vine. Today, kudzu can be seen overtaking buildings, abandoned vehicles, and other vegetation, shrouding the landscape in a blanket of green. Kudzu may serve as nutritious forage for cattle and other livestock, but otherwise has little economic value. In many areas of the South, kudzu is beyond the point of trying to control it, and people have learned to tolerate it. They just make sure they close their window at night so they don't wake up with a vine entangling their bed. On the southern tip of Africa is one of the most diverse plant communities on Earth. The fynbos, named for the narrow-leaved, grass-like plants and evergreen shrubs that dominate the area, is a unique area that is greatly threatened by a variety of exotic species. One of those is the Monterey Pine from coastal California. Monterey Pine is native to California and was once limited to a narrow strip of the California coast. When planted in the southern hemisphere, Monterey Pine grows rapidly into large, straight trees, and because of this trait, it has been widely cultivated in timber plantations. Similar to histories of invasive plants in our own country, Monterey Pine has escaped from cultivation and become invasive in South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Aside from displacing native vegetation, the trees cause significant problems for managers of grazing lands, watersheds, and protected areas. Invasive pines are expensive to control, often requiring a 3-step process of cutting, burning, and hand-pulling emerging seedlings. Several other pines native to North America have become invasive in the southern hemisphere, including lodgepole and ponderosa. This week we're talking about invasive plants around the world. Today we will travel to Ukraine in Central Europe. There are at least 160 species of American plants represented in the Ukrainian wild flora, although not all of them are considered invasive. One of the most invasive and successful American aliens is black locust. Black locust, which is native to eastern North America, was introduced to Ukraine in 1804, cultivated as an excellent ornamental and honey plant, and praised for its ability to prevent soil erosion. It has only recently been recognized as an invasive plant, especially in steppe communities, where it forms dense thickets that decimate native diversity. Northern red oak is another North American plant that was introduced to Ukraine as an ornamental and forestry species and has now become invasive. Northern red oak strongly outcompetes native tree species and subsequently changes the structure of plant communities. Several grasses and forbs native to North America have also become invasive in Central Europe, including rough barnyard grass, tufted lovegrass, foxtail barley, sandbur, and curly-cup gumweed. Some plants seem to be a nuisance no matter where they occur on Earth. One of these is a complex of blackberry species. Many different but closely related blackberry species are invasive. Himalayan blackberry is problematic in the Pacific Northwest and across the U.S. It is especially problematic on the west side of Oregon and Washington, and in California and western British Columbia. A complex of 14 different blackberry species has been named a weed of national significance in Australia. Blackberry is also weedy in New Zealand. Regardless of location, blackberry forms very dense thickets that prevent the establishment of trees and other vegetation, limit the movement of people and animals, and increase flooding and erosion potential. In Australia, blackberry is known to increase the risk of fire due to large amounts of dead, semi-woody canes. On the upside, blackberries are an excellent food source for some birds and mammals, and most people can't turn down a piece of blackberry pie. I'm Jane Mangold, and I hope you've enjoyed our travels together this week as we learned about invasive plants in other parts of the world.